We're in and
There
we're
you go.
live. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of VAWMA Chats, where we're going to be chatting a little bit today about the Voluntary Association for Work and Mutual Aid. My name is James, and you're joining us live from the snowy rural metropolis of Owen Sound, located snugly in the northern half of southwestern Ontario. And today, we're joined with a friend of the show, Rebecca. Yay!
Nanu nanu.
Nanu Nanu indeed. Live long and prosper. Glad to have you. For those who don't know, Rebecca has been an integral part of the Vama journey. She's been around sort of in the background, certainly helping me bounce ideas around with regards to what it is that we talk about here on the podcast, really. And so I'm really enthusiastic and happy to have Rebecca join us today because I love the idea of community dialogue, communication, and it's very difficult to do that when you're by yourself. And a very happy Nanu Nanu from the chat from our resident Andy. Thank you very much. Um, this is feeling great. Rebecca, can I throw you on the spot for a moment? If I ask you to introduce yourself and say just whatever it is you're comfortable with, sharing the world about who you are and what makes who you are and what excites you about the Vama idea, I guess. I can talk for a
I guess
couple
I,
seconds if you want a few seconds to think about an
I
answer.
was gonna say, I guess I should have prepared something, but
Oh, and
mm,
I'm just thinking about this on the fly too, so I apologize.
yeah. So I've known James since he was a little kid, and he's a decent sort. And when I heard he was interested in this, I went, "Wow, that's exactly what we need. That's exactly what I've been always wishing for." And have no resources to do that sort of thing. I've been kind of sickly and feeble for most of my life and
Hmm.
just can't have a normal job. And spend a lot of time thinking about how we could make these things better. And um, I when I got in contact with James again after a few years of not seeing him, I was somehow not surprised to find that he was all on board with all of understands the way the world works and what we need to do to make it better. And this is it. This is, I feel like, the reason I'm so passionate about this is where these things start to make the world better, is these community things. They
Hmm.
start in one place and then they grow. Oh, and Cat's gonna help too.
Oh, mercy. Which
Hey,
one's this
Mia.
one? Is this Maya?
This is Mia. This is
Oh,
Mia.
Mia.
The other one is Orange.
Gotcha.
She won't come along when there's nonsense going on in the on the laptop. She's more shy.
You know what? I can respect that. When there's nonsense
Yeah.
going on my laptop, I can respect that. And
Mia likes to be in the middle of things.
this really is the idea where we are coming together with what meager resources we've got, and bringing our skills, our talents, our Mia,
Aww.
and to the table. Living laborers bringing what it is that we're able to produce, to create our resources, our talents, and pooling our resources together in order to get something off the ground. And then, if one were successful, we've prearranged ahead of time how it is that we're going to divide up what it is that we make amongst each other based on what we've contributed to the process. If you work double overtime, you're going to get more of the surplus than the person who works part time. But the person who works part time is going to get a part of the surplus. Is going to get a part of the what it is that we produce, that we make. And for me, it really started years ago when I had this dream of I was asking myself, much like most of us do at some point in time while we're working our wage slave jobs, if I could do anything, what would I do? And the answer to that for me was I would get together with my friends and we would open a place where we would create memories for people, good memories, happy memories, places where, families could bring their kids, old couples could come and reminisce, young teenagers could come and be teens, and just, build the kind of healthy, happy human community that we are all desiring for, that we evolved to have, by virtue of the fact that for like millions of years Homo sapiens just lived in close tight-knit communities of like maybe 100 people or so. And we don't have that in our society. We are so alienated from each other. The best we can hope for is maybe to find a community at what, church, sporting events, at the bar. Maybe, if we're lucky, you got a good music scene, you got a good art scene, you got some good people that
That's the
it's
best.
safe to be around. Maybe there's a good pride community in your area. I've had a lot of good experiences with those things. Um, Maybe even like 8 years ago at this point, when it was just a trickle in the back of my mind, was to create a place where people can come and just be. Um, and oh, just want to make sure we're not losing the stream here or something. Um, Sorry. I'm. Could someone in the chat shout out if we've lost the stream? Because I've lost it on my end, I think.
No.
Okay. Stream connecting hiccup. Okay, good. No, I think we're back. Um, it's back. Okay. So for basically, to sum up what I was trying to say, is that human beings are at the core of our business model. And one of the ideas that came up, or the conversation over the years, was that people will be our bottom line, as opposed to corporations, LLCs, where joint stock companies, where the fiduciary responsibility to maximize shareholder value is the driving force in those kind of enterprises. Okay, not my cup of tea, but I'm not here to stop anybody from doing what they want to do. I'm here to bring as many people together to do what we can do together, and that's the VAWMA idea. Um, the Voluntary Association for Work and Mutual Aid is precisely this hope that us living laborers can pull together what resources we can in order to control the businesses, in order to create the businesses that will then hire us with living wages, give us control over our schedules, and again, when we produce that surplus, we've already prearranged how it is that we're going to share it amongst us, and it's based on things like how much have you contributed. If you work more hours, you get more. If you work less, you get less, but you still get something. If you're one of our community members, which many of our members will be, it depends on how much money you spend with us. Currently, the numbers we're floating around is for every $50 you spend with us, you get a share in the consumer patronage. And we haven't quite figured out how we're going to end up doing that. There are certain tax incentives or tax breaks if we do it one way versus another. So we're kind of learning all those things. But before I go promising the moon, I'd like to make sure I understand the full ramifications of everything. So suffice to say, it's intriguing. And as we get the details, we will be sharing it with everyone. But there are definitely reasons to go with the patronage model over the other things. But now I think if I'm not careful, I'm going to start going down some bunny trails. And I think we should probably recap where we left off last week with the series that we've been going through. With regards to the 7 cooperative principles, and of course the 7 cooperative principles are we start with open and voluntary membership, which basically means we don't practice discrimination against people. If you want to join, we want to have you. But if you don't want other people to join, we may have a problem. Um, and of course, beyond that, after that, we've got democratic member control. Point number 3 in the cooperative principles is member economic participation. You put in some money; it's reasonable to expect you can get some money out if we make some money. Point number 4 that we're continuing today is autonomy and independence, and that has to do, of course, with if we're setting up our business to be democratically controlled by its members, we want to make sure that nobody can come in from the outside and take away the members' democratic rights. We don't want to have a dictator come in and take over what it is that we're doing, and what we're going to be discussing today is how we safeguard that and how we play ball with each other, how we work together to become not an individual person humming their own tune, but a symphony of members creating beautiful harmonies together. And we can do it. Human beings are fascinating and fabulous and capable of doing so much when they come together to cooperate. And that's what we're going to be exploring a little bit today. Point 5 is education, and I forget what the other word is, but it's education within the context of cooperatives. Point 6 is cooperation amongst cooperatives, which I love. And point 7, of course, is a concern for community. And these are all things that I would be near and dear to my heart, even if they didn't have the 7 cooperative principles stamped in front of them. And last week we were talking a little bit about our structure within VAWMA. So we started with the idea we're going to start with our 25 members, and you can see below me here we've got the kind of base example of we would have our community members on one side, and then we have got our dedicated members on the other. And in this scenario, the difference between the two different kind of members essentially is how much money you're paying in and how much control you have over what's going on in the business on a daily basis. The community members are putting in $300, and we'll give you a year to pay that off, so it's $25 a month. We don't want to make this a barrier for entry to anybody, or we want to make this as low a barrier for entry for everybody to be a member. And then you get to vote on who will be the board of directors, who will be who will control the company, basically. You also get to participate in consumer patronage. We talked about that previously. We'll talk about it again as we go forward, but not right now. And then we got our dedicated members. And our dedicated members are the people who are going to be running the business on a daily basis. They're going to be putting in $20,000 of their money. And we're going to give them 10 years to do that because I don't have $20,000 and I need this to be something that I can buy into.
And of course, all of these numbers are going to be negotiable, right? Like,
absolutely, these are
when
just
you get the board and everybody's voting, this is a rough draft, right?
Yes, thank you. This is absolutely a rough idea. Consider everything that's in this podcast at this point to be an alpha in the beta full release idea of the language, where we're definitely in the late ideas stage, where we're coming up with what we can do possibly. The next step is to then transition into something that's a little bit more legally solid. Incorporate people, start buying in, money gets transferred, and then we get started and we become a legal entity. We become a business, brick and mortar business, and we start trying to get customers in the community to take their hard-earned money and put them with us. But for right now, this is definitely just rough ideas. So the money may be different. The buy-in may be a different amount, but the $20,000 amount is based on the idea that our first business, in this example, Cafe Libre, may cost us about $500,000 to get off the ground. It might be less, it might be more. We might be able to start it with half that. But we would have to, cash flow would be incredibly tight. Having a little bit more in reserves to just help us float for the first couple of months, if and when we may or may not have customers, will be really important. And actually, one of the things I've wanted to bake into our business model is to make sure that we have at least like 2 or 3 months worth of wages sitting in the bank waiting to pay everybody. If we have 0 customers, we would be able to work for 3 months and everybody would still be able to go home with a paycheck, pay their mortgage, pay their rent, pay their bills, get food on the table, and we could do that for 3 months without a single customer. Now, if we did that, we would be very nervous, and if we didn't have a single customer after 3 months, we'd probably start doing our exit strategy, because whatever it is we're doing isn't working. But I am confident that we will have customers. I'm confident that when we get to that point, we'll have done all of our homework, all of our due diligence to figure out what our demographics in our neighborhood look like, because we're going to be relying a lot on foot traffic. We will have a drive-through. We're on the highway. We might be able to get people as they're coming into Owen Sound on the way to work. If the Tim Hortons park lineup is full, they may come to us. Who knows? It depends on how fast we can be and how cost-effective we are. So those are things we need to consider. But before I start going down that bunny
place to go.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's the other thing, because we can go into it, but we need to focus on what we need to do in order to maintain autonomy and independence. So last week we talked a little bit about our how we would start in the beginning. So we'd have our community members over here, and our dedicated members over here. And the dedicated members are going to be the people that are going to be running the business on the day-to-day basis. Their buy-in is a little bit more. I said $20,000. We're going to spread that out over 10 years, so that it's $2,000 a year, or $166 and change a month. And I can do $166 or $167 a month. It would be tight. It wouldn't be fun, but I could do it. And if that gets me a job that pays me a living wage, that gives me control over my schedule and all the other things that I'm looking for out of a job, this non-precarious work that gives me dignity, that gives me a say in how things are run at the appropriate times, that give me the vehicle for change. That if I see something that needs to change, I have a way to be able to get that change into the policies that we all do. Whereas, contrasted by regular work, where if I see a change, I can tell my manager, and my manager may or may not care. The CEO certainly may or may not care. Depends on the business. You may get lucky. Maybe it's a mom and pop, and the business owner is right there and is deeply concerned about like tiny little things that might cost them 30 cents a day or something, because they know that adds up over the course of a year. Whereas the CEO of like a multinational might never care if there's like something in an individual store. And I don't know. So let's go to the models, and let's really quickly kind of go through what we've got here. And let me switch to our screen so that everybody at home can follow along. There we go. And so we've got, again, our group of dedicated members who are going to be paying in more money, and they form the sociocracy circle that's going to run this business. Community members. We're going to get a board of directors, and we're going to put different members on the board of directors as well. So our sociocracy circle over here is going to choose a delegate that's going to represent this group of workers in the sociocracy circle over here on the board of directors. And the board of as well as the community member will have somebody representing them and their interests on the board of directors. And all these people together will collectively run our business. In this case, it's going to start off as Cafe Libre, and we're going to have a president, a secretary, and a treasurer, as well as a dedicated member and a community member sitting on that board, and everybody has the right to object. Everybody has the right to consent. And we go around that circle until everybody is like, yes, this is something the community members can live with. Yes, this is something the dedicated members can live with. And treasurer, secretary, and the president are all like, yeah, this is the direction that we want to go in. That the people elected us to make sure that that we can. And then we move forward, and with no objections. The community representative, also sits on the circle of Cafe Libre. So once a month, when Cafe Libre comes together and opens up the hood of their proverbial car to take a look at the engine and see how things are running, we will, in this particular case, we're going to be sitting around in our circles, and we're going to say, okay, this is how we've been running the business the last month. This is how much money we made, or this is how much money we lost, and this is what our customers are saying from the feedback. So then we would then turn to our floor staff, our customer service staff, who basically interact with our customers on a regular basis, and hear from them what kind of feedback they're getting from their customers, from our customers, and then the cooks take that, and they, if they're hearing from the customer service staff that the customers aren't liking the food the way the cooks are preparing them, the cooks are going to be like, okay, well, what can we do? What are they looking for? Is there a general direction? And we move from that. And the circle basically becomes a forum for us to communicate relevant information to each party that they need in order to make good, effective decisions that end up helping us all, so we can, well, honestly, make a bit of money. Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think what we do afterwards, or the way we go about making that money, is very important into determining the right or wrongness of having it. But I think in this scenario, if people are hungry and we're making breakfast and we're charging a price that's reasonable, that people are willing to pay, and they're getting something out of it that's healthy, nutritious, gets them going for the day, all that fun stuff, then everybody's happy. And all the fun stuff. And of course, to take a look at autonomy and independence within the context of our group here, we've got in the Cafe Libre setup, we've got it broken down into cooks. This is kind of, I say, floor staff, counter drive-through, and busing staff. But really, this is any sort of customer service people, and they could float. Could be the traditional wait staff, people who wait on tables. Could be people working behind the counters, like you see at major coffee chains, with the little headphones on, because we'll have a drive-through, and we want to be able to communicate effectively with the rest of our team. So. And we'll have, we won't necessarily be serving full bacon and egg breakfasts at our drive-thru, but what we might be doing is we might have a menu that we set for the drive-thru with really quick items that we can get through, like bagels or muffins or things that we're baking in our bakery. And I got thinking, I'd be curious to hear your thought on this. We could also sell other kind of things that people often need when they are going through a drive-thru. Say, a charger for your phone, for your car. That's quite often something that people will stop, get out of the car, go into something like a Dollarama or sort of thing. I probably shouldn't mention companies by name. They probably get nervous at that sort of thing. But the thing is going to be, we'll end up in a scenario where people will be driving into town, realizing that their phone charger or their phone is about to die, and they're like, well, I could go to Tim Hortons, then I could stop at the dollar store, and then I could do blah, blah, blah. Or I could go to Cafe Libre, get a coffee and a car charger all at once. It's just a thought I had in 2 o'clock in the morning when I was trying to go to sleep. And probably originally when I would notice that my phone was about to die and I was stuck in a Tim Hortons drive-thru. Not to mention any more big corporations again. Anyway,
Mhm.
to get myself focused, how are we feeling about understanding the sociocracy circles and how things go so far?
Are you asking me?
Yeah, just as an understanding for a point of, we've reached a point where if we need some clarification, now might be the time for us to do it.
Yeah. Uh. Oh, I should have listened to last week's talk to see what you talked about. But
No
yeah,
problem.
this sociocracy circle thing is really fascinating to me. And I mean, like I said, obviously is the way things should be run.
Hmm.
Um, because everybody gets to have a say.
Hmm.
Um, and like we were talking about, there are methods for dealing with people who want to dissent. Like you're
Hmm.
not, it is voluntary. You're not forced to go along with everything. So you have to have um, ways so that people can say what they need or say what they don't want, and it just um, I don't know what to ask. With
Hmm.
your you've been describing it very well so far.
Well,
Um,
yeah, and as you're describing it, it's occurring to me that it might be good to kind of like just spend another half second just to go into the ideas behind like what these circles functionally do, and like how they interact with each other. Because you're right, it's all about people having the right to consent, to kind of opt in, to object, to have their say. And to facilitate that, we have a facilitator whose job it is to make sure that anybody who has an issue that they want to address to the group, they have an opportunity to, when we get together at our meetings, as I go through the meetings, it'll be an item on the agenda. So if you have something you want to talk about, talk to the facilitator. They make sure that what it is you want to talk about gets on the agenda. You then have an opportunity to present what it is that you want to present to the group that's relevant, I should say, to the conversation. If you have something to address that only affects the cooks, you only need to address the cooks. If you have something that needs to address everybody, you wait till we get to our monthly meeting. You make sure that your item gets on the agenda by talking to the facilitator, and then it gets then you get your 2 minutes of fame where you get to present what it is you want to present, and then everybody has a chance to kind of ask questions. You get a chance to respond to the questions. People then go around and they say, do we want to adopt this as a new policy? And people can then either consent, agree, good enough for now, safe enough to try, or they can object. And they say, I have an objection and it's based on XYZ. And if we can address the XYZ, then we can move on.
yeah.
And that's what I love about sociocracy. It's
Mm.
it's not a hard no. It's not a 51% can drag 49% along, kicking and screaming. It's everybody has a chance to voice their red flags, which I think is incredibly healthy. In a society where we are constantly in positions where it doesn't matter what we think, it doesn't matter what we say, it doesn't matter what we feel, we have no way of affecting or changing our circumstances because it's not under our control. It's not within our sphere of of power. And what this does is this gives effectively everybody who's a part of this a chance to opt in, a chance to say, to give their 2 cents and to voice their concerns, to to fully integrate with themselves as an individual, and then allow that to uh, bolster and make the community more healthy. Hopefully,
It,
traumatized people can can
and
sometimes
then
get false negatives or false positives or what have you.
and
Yeah.
I know you're not a money obsessed kind of person, but I keep wanting to point out these things are actually economically sound. People will
Hmm.
think, oh, it's us this hippie, everyone lovey dovey, we're never going to make any money. But the fact is, when you listen to the customers,
Mm-hmm.
you can make more money.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when the customers can have input into what you're going to sell, they can have the store they want, you know, the stuff they want in their store. They're going to shop there. It's good to listen
And
to many people and the workers and the customers.
yeah, and I mean, on the face of it,
What an
we,
idea.
we've we have scenario A where you have a multi-million-dollar business
Mhm.
with, you know, maybe a dozen employees standing behind the counter, all making something slightly above minimum wage, and that business will make millions. And 9 times out of 10, the millions that they make, the minimum, the pittance that is paid out in minimum wage goes to the workers, and that goes to, you know, local other shops in the area, rent, you know, gas, food, that sort of thing. But the rest of it gets extracted down to Bay Street or Wall Street and taken out of the local economy, gets taken out of local circulation. And that's no longer money that's going to the community. Well, if we had a business with, you know, half a dozen people standing behind the counter making a living wage, doing the exact same amount of business that these megacorps do, you know, we could pay ourselves a living wage, still potentially make millions, but instead of that being extracted to Bay Street or Wall Street, it gets distributed amongst everybody who helped make it, included from our customers. You know, for every $50 they spend with us, they'll get a share in the consumer patronage, which will be that $1 million that, you know, we're making because we're doing as much business as the megacorp in this scenario. And instead of instead of those millions going to Bay Street and getting distributed amongst Bay Street people, bankers and business owners, it'll get distributed amongst our customers and amongst our workers, you know, who were there to make it. So, not in addition to making the living wage on a day-to-day basis, you know, at the end of the year, when it turns out we've made $1 million, you know, or something, you know, doing what other corporations are making $1 million at, it just gets split between us rather than going to a small handful of people.
And community projects. So
Yeah,
the
yeah.
right,
Mm,
because the board and I think we were talking about how this is part of the mission statement or whatever, that it the stuff you're funding is going back into the community. It's not funding some CEO's yacht.
hmm
It's funding community projects that you can vote on.
Absolutely. And you know, community projects could be, you know, things that you know, it could be the classic, you know, put a park or a playground in a park sort of thing.
Mhm.
Could be creating artist grants, you know, or bursaries for education for students, you know, for the future for our communities as well. You know, imagine if instead of going to, you know, a generic major coffee chain and spending, you know, $15 on a couple of coffees for you and your passengers in your vehicle, and it going to God knows where, you know, some millionaire's yacht, third yacht. That money, you can tell yourself that a part of the money that you're spending is going to help kids in that neighborhood go to university and go to college, you know, not have to leave with crippling debt, but could actually leave and hit the ground running. um, I personally, like, that would be a draw for me, you know. And if we can be cheaper than the competition, and if we can be faster, you know, let's do that, you know. So um, yeah,
Good
I love
try.
that. Yeah,
Mhm.
so let's bring it back to the sociocracy or the sociocracy thing, and see if we can't see how we will continue to be autonomous and independent as we grow and expand into growing from having community members and dedicated members. We would also have union members. So when we get to the point where our Cafe Libre is growing and is we just need more hands on deck to make this thing function so that our customers are happy, we hire. We put up posters. We'll start with our community members, say to our community members, hey, is there anybody who's a community member who wants to pick up a couple of part-time shifts? And if they do, great. We then create a third class, or a third class of membership. Not that this is hierarchical; it's just sequential. And this third class will be our union members, and their buy-in will be identical to what the community members are. So if the community members are putting in $300 for their buy-in, the union members are also putting in $300 for their buy-in. $25 a month. This is to ensure that we eliminate barriers to entry as much as possible. And that gives a person all the same rights and access to consumer patronage that they had as a consumer member. They can still vote for the president, the treasurer, the secretary. For every $50 they spend, they get a share of patronage and the consumer patronage. But they can also work shifts at our business over here, Cafe Libre. Our community members can't. They're legally distinct. So when our union members work over here at Cafe Libre, they would also get patronage, workers' patronage. So for every shift that they work, they would get a half share of patronage. And then when they work the second shift, they get another half share for a full share. And it just grows over time. But we talked about that previously, and if you're interested, you can go check that out on our website at www.youtube.com/VAWMA, and check us out. So what is also significant about our union members is that you'll notice they're not sitting in the circle. These union members, because they're not dedicated members, they do not necessarily get to sit on the big circle, the once a month that we get together, and have a say in what's going on. Kinda. What we'll do is we'll say to our union members to say, okay, all you union members who are working at Cafe Libre, you guys get together and you choose from amongst yourselves a delegate who will sit on the circle of Cafe Libre here, and that delegate from the union members will have the right to consent or not, or to object. So our union members have a democratic vehicle for expressing the things that they see and voicing their or having their objections voiced, and that's through their delegate on the circle here. So that's the compromise. If you want to have more control, if you want to have more say on, if you want to become a dedicated member, I think we'll bake into our bylaws a clause that allows union members who have worked a minimum amount of hours at a specific VAWMA cooperative should have the rights to become a dedicated member of that cooperative, with probably a couple of other provisos and stuff. If there are objections within that circle, those objections would have to be addressed. But beyond that, I can see no reason to prevent anybody, union member, from becoming a dedicated member if that's what they choose to do. But if they don't want to, they're not obligated to. They can stay at that $300 entry level. Their patronage won't be, when they're working, won't be worth quite as much as a dedicated member, but they will have access to the sociocracy circle through their delegate. And of course, the union members, irrespective of which business they're working at, because I believe, and when we're going to get into this next when we talk about what happens when VAWMA has multiple businesses, we're going to be discussing then at that point, how the union members will form their own independent union member circle. And in this circle, they will, of course, have a leader, a secretary, keeping track of the notes, a facilitator, making sure that your concerns get on the agenda, the leader making sure that what everybody's voted for gets implemented, and a delegate who represents the dedicated members on the board of directors. And of course, the board of directors continues to operate using sociocracy. So if union members have an objection to how we are running VAWMA as a whole, they have an opportunity to object, and we don't move forward until their objections are resolved. Same for the dedicated members of this business. Same for the community members. They have the right to object as well, and they have the right to consent. And then we've got the core three that are the people who have cast vision for what VAWMA can be, that community members and dedicated members and union members alike have all voted for, and have elected to steer this enterprise that we're creating. And so this is the point where we left off last week. So this week, before we go forward, are there whoops, let me just fix that. Before we go forward, are there any questions or any points of clarification? No, sounds good. I'm seeing here, I'm just going to check the chat here. But how will Bay Street survive these losses if all the money comes to us? Sarcasm. Yes, indeed. And, maybe this is how things evolve. Maybe this is how things become more equitable in our country, because we know that there are problems with income disparity between the haves and the have-nots in our society. Well, this is a way of balancing it out without violence, without anything, except for people going to us to buy coffee rather than to some other major coffee chain.
It seems kind of crazy that we've all just accepted that one guy can own the whole company and decide everything without listening to anybody, any of the workers. Like, that's just normal now. Can make decisions that affect their lives terribly. I've heard so many stories about people whose lives are destroyed by some CEO who just doesn't care. They just, they need to take a day off to go to the doctor, but they're not allowed. They're not allowed. They find somebody to take their shift, but they're not allowed because somebody in Toronto says no. What? Yeah. What is this? Why shouldn't the workers own the business? And some of the times when this happens, I guess, when I was reading about co-ops, is the if the business is going to fail, right? The workers can get together and just buy it and own it.
And it would be wonderful if we were successful enough. And this is sort of like, VAWMA version 3 or 4.0 when we've grown and we've incorporated several businesses. And we're hopefully going to get today to what happens when we incorporate existing businesses into our structure, how we transition them from capitalist style, dictatorial, hierarchical, top-down structures, how we merge them into our system, and how we can transition them from that into something that looks more like a sociocracy circle. And let's get to it, because we are running out of time. We'll probably take about another we'll land this sort of thing here. So with regards to autonomy and independence, we're now growing. VAWMA is now expanding into version 2.0, where we realize that we need two things are going on. We need a way to get to and from work. We need to get a way to get our customers to and from our location. So we've decided we're going to open up a cab company, a cooperative cab company, and they're gonna start it off. We're gonna have our leader, our delegate, and our secretary. This is small enough. We've only got, looks like, 5 people here to start our little cab company. And so we don't need a facilitator per se. The leader can handle the facilitation roles. And also handle purchasing, whatever else may be the case in something this small. But you notice again, we've got a delegate, and this delegate is going to I'll come back to that in a second. But suffice to say, we do have a delegate. But in addition to having the cab company, we also realize that, and this is a little self-serving on my behalf, we need someone to look after our kids while we're at work. So we're going to open up a childcare cooperative as well, and this is going to have a few more people, but it's still small enough that we don't need a facilitator. It's got what, 4, 6, 8 people. 8 people. Yeah, a leader can easily facilitate 8 people in a scenario like that. But if we find that the leader is just got a little bit too much on their plate, facilitation is a little bit too much, the circle can opt in to create the facilitator role, and they will take care of the monthly meeting, make sure that people's agenda items get on the agenda, and make sure that when things come up that the conversation flows, that things are being addressed, and of course the secretary writes it all down so that it's all nice and legal. We've got we functionally have 3, you could argue 4 cooperatives going on at this point. We've got Cafe Libre and Bakery, which is kind of like 2 co-ops smushed into one. We've got our childcare cooperative, and we've got our cab cooperative. And with regards to autonomy and independence, you notice that these circles are not overlapping with each other. And that's because Cafe Libre is its own sort of like semi-autonomous business. It's running a cafe and bakery. The cab company is running the cab company. The childcare co-op is running a childcare company. And whether or not the bakers have enough flour, or what days this baker works versus which days this baker works, has zero impact on what's going on with the childcare beyond whether or not they need to know how much staff they need to have on hand in order to look after these people's kids while they're at work. And to accomplish that sort of thing, this delegate here would be tasked with taking that relevant information. So if we know we've got 25 dedicated members, and maybe a dozen of us have kids, and at any given time we're going to be those of us with kids are going to be working predominantly these hours. So we're going to need to have at least 1 or 2 people on during the day to look after our kids, maybe 1 person at night, however it works. And but we'll be able to figure out over here the relevant information that the childcare co-op needs to know. We'll tell that to our dedicated member, and our dedicated member will then come over here, talk to their leader, and let them know, hey, this is how many people we're going to be needing your services. And the leader will say, thank you very much, and they'll then go around the circle with our childcare dedicated members and say, okay, here's the schedule, this is how many people we need to be watching so many kids at this point in time, blah 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 blah, and they make it happen. But the Cafe Libre does not need to be sitting in on their circle. They don't need to be micromanaging the childcare cooperative. The childcare cooperative can manage itself. And likewise, if the childcare cooperative has something going on that they need to communicate to the Cafe Libre members, the childcare members would communicate what they need to the dedicated member, or sorry, not the dedicated member, the delegate. That's better. The delegate will then come over here and talk to the leader of Cafe Libre Circle and communicate what needs to be communicated, and if it's relevant, the leader can then introduce the delegate from the childcare cooperative to, say, one of the leader of the cook staff, or the customer service staff, whoever they need to talk to. It's all about facilitating communication effectively. This can be done in person. This can be done, probably even by email, or using our internal apps that we create ourselves. We can create what effectively amounts to like messaging groups that allow for quick and effective communication between the relevant people, so that we don't have to guess about who do I talk to about this. talk to the leader. The leader will know, and talk to your delegate. The delegate will know which leaders to go to. And the purpose of all this is to have a clearly established lines of communication of like who to go to and who you can talk to at the relevant time. And so this is all how we maintain control within our structure. And of course, these businesses will also have a delegate. Their delegate will sit on the board of directors. And of course, we need to balance out the board of directors with, for every business we will have a community member. And what we'll do is we'll end up rotating our community members through the different businesses. So once a quarter, or maybe longer, maybe once a year, we'll see. We'll figure that out, what best practices are. But our community representatives that are sitting on the board of directors will rotate from each business. For now, we'll say once a quarter. They'll spend 3 months at this guy will spend 3 months here at the cab company, and then when that is done, they'll then move over here to Cafe Libre. The community rep, the person who was at Cafe Libre will then move to the childcare cooperative, and the community rep that was at the childcare cooperative will move down to the co-op, the cab co-op. And what that will do is that will give our community members insights into how all of our businesses are run, and they'll be able to bring that information back to the board of directors, and they'll be able to share those insights that they see from their experience of being a part of all the different cooperative businesses across VAWMA, and seeing how they function on the micro level. And then they can then bring those experiences back and share a vision for how all these businesses can function together better on a more macro level. And so that's how we facilitate connection to each other, while allowing our cab company to do what it needs to do to be the most successful cab company. I can conceive that when we start this, we will make our cab company headquarters out of the same location as we're doing Cafe Libre, and let that be our hub for where our cabs go to live. So if you ever need a ride somewhere, you can always walk to Cafe Libre and expect that if there's a cab available, it'll be hanging out there. And if not now, then if you hang around long enough, there will be a cab eventually. It's kind of like what we used to do downtown. If it was 3 o'clock in the morning and you wanted a ride, and you didn't have your phone on you, you just wandered downtown to the one corner store at the corner of 10th and 3rd, and there would be 1, 3, 5 different taxis from different companies sitting there waiting for potential hires at 3 o'clock in the morning. Well, why don't you come down to Cafe Libre? 3 o'clock in the morning, we'll serve you soup sandwich, some coffee, decaf if you prefer to fall asleep at some point while it's still dark out. And when the cab shows up, you can hail it, you can take it. Anyway, but let's say the cab company decides that it makes sense for them to open up a physical location, a brick and mortar dispatch unit elsewhere, and they can make more money that way. I don't know. But they can decide to do that if they can make the argument for it making us more money, and they can do it. The Cafe Libre people do not have a stake in that game. The board of directors will. The treasurer will go over their math and try and figure out if it's going to cost us more money or not. The secretary and the president will be interacting with them, because the president, the secretary, and the treasurer are there to make sure that the business as a whole is successful, not just individual businesses. And so they'll have like the vision for how it can all integrate, where it can all go. But at the end of the day, the cab drivers get to decide how the cab company goes. And so long as they're not costing us money, and in a scenario where they're costing the business overall, they're a sinking ship, then at that point we need to ask ourselves, is this a service that even though it's costing us money to have it, it's providing something that enables us to do what we need to do? Like, let's say that we end up losing, after we and factor in things like wages and gas and wear and tear and insurance and all that other fun stuff. We discover that maybe we can't be as competitive as the other cab companies while paying ourselves a living wage, because that would be one of our stipulations. Well, maybe we just run the taxi service at a loss because it ends up bringing more customers to us at Cafe Libre, and that ends up making us more money in the long run. You know what I'm saying? And we can sit back and we can take a look at that and figure out that, yeah, actually it's worth it for us to keep these 5 people employed, and keeping people coming to our business, than it is for us to liquidate it. But let's say it's a dud. Let's say it's an absolute lemon. Let's just say it's costing us more money than it's making us an overall. Then at that point we go through a couple of different processes, but it will be all connected here with the community members, the board of directors, and these dedicated members. It'll all be negotiated in such a way to make sure that we end up either buying the dedicated members who have bought in out. So if we've got, here we've got 5 dedicated members who have all bought into the cab company, but it turns out they're all really bad at running a cab company collectively, like just between all 5 of them. None of them can make a smart business decision. Well, okay, we've decided we still want to have a cab company, but we've also decided that these 5 people aren't great at running it. The board of directors, the other businesses, the community members. Okay, we'll make an offer then to buy them out, the dedicated members that have bought into it at that point, and then we'll then open it up to dedicated membership to either the union members and allow them to run it to the point where it becomes profitable, or they become dedicated members and run it when it becomes as according to how they see fit, and hopefully they're better at running it than the last set of dedicated members. In any case, we're going to make sure that people who've bought in will get their money back if we decide that they can't be the people to run this business on VAWMA's behalf. And I'm sure there are other things that are out there that other cooperatives have done that we can learn best practices for. And some of the stuff I'm just kind of like, I'm still learning myself. So if I come back in another month or 3 and say, hey, I've learned this, we can do this instead, please don't hold this against me. Suffice to say, yeah, I think we can just skip ahead here to this point here where we have union members involved in these businesses as well. And of course, they will function in much the same way as union members function on the Cafe Libre. They won't necessarily sit on the circle, but they will themselves form their own circle within a circle and have a delegate that does sit within that circle, and that delegate has the right to object, to consent on behalf of the union workers. And again, if our union workers end up being a really good fit and they end up working a lot of hours or enough hours at an individual cooperative, then they can become a dedicated member. But here's the other thing: as union members, they're not limited to a single cooperative. So let's say you've got a union member over here who is trained on how to be a cab driver, but is also trained on how to be a cook, and is also trained on how to be a baker. And so whenever these shifts are available for a cook or a baker or a cab driver come up, they can, because they have been trained in all these different roles, they can apply and get those shifts that are available for them. And so you might have a situation where a union member is driving a cab on Tuesday, cooking breakfasts on Wednesday, baking bread on Thursday, and is off on Friday, Saturday, and then works as a floor staff customer service on Monday, and yeah, we're right back around, aren't we? So, in a scenario like that, they will receive patronage at each place that they work at while they're working, and if they have an issue with what they're seeing at the different workplace, they have a delegate member that they can communicate that to. Maybe they are the delegate member at that particular workplace. They work there enough that it makes sense for them to be the delegate. Um, and But as an individual union member, they've got a lot of ability to kind of flow between the different organizations and work where they want to as it's available. And all of this is to safeguard how we run things. Now, in a scenario that we go into, the board of directors here goes into a relationship with a credit union or a bank or a private lender in order to raise capital, in order to keep this whole thing, to raise cash flow so that we can make sure everybody's paid and we can expand and we can buy more stuff or whatever it is. These guys are responsible for making sure that whatever agreement that we enter into, it does not remove the community members' rights to elect representatives onto the board of directors. It doesn't affect our cooperative businesses' right to delegate or have a delegate from their circles sit on the board of directors to represent their interests. And also, we got to make sure that we don't infringe on the union members' right to have their delegate sit on the board of directors to direct where this business is going. Whatever we do where we incorporate help from the outside, the power, autonomy, and independence of the board of directors has to remain set apart, untouched, and intact, so that we can engage in democratic, community-owned, worker-directed business enterprises that end up feeding back into our community. And yeah, this is how we maintain the autonomy and independence. These guys can't enter into an agreement that takes that away, and none of these other individual groups can dictate to any other what they can and cannot do, but we relationally interact with each other through the processes of, again, sociocracy, where if there is something that a business is going to do that's going to screw over the union members, for example, the union members can say, well, hold on, we object to this. This is not something we agreed to, and you need to address our concerns collectively before we will consent to what's going on. And that's actually a healthy thing, because these people are not our wage slaves. The whole reason why we're setting up VAWMA is to stop being wage slaves, where we're in a position where we're removed our power, our freedom, our voice, our capacity to participate. We want to engage in as much as possible, so yeah. So to that end, this is how we maintain autonomy, independence within the VAWMA structure. Yeah, I think that's probably a good place to land it. Are there any questions or any? Would you like? Let me ask you this: what's your takeaway from all this, based on what we've talked about so far?
Autonomy and independence. I like it. So what I get is that there could be several co-ops with the same basic values. So the same mission statement, the same value statement. They're organized. They can share workers, and also they each business will control itself. So when you're talking about autonomy and independence, this is this is the other part of everyone being able to have a say, is
Hmm.
that also the different businesses can't like affect change the other ones, because there's a structure. There's this structure here with the circles, and you can see clearly. And often having just a clear hierarchy clears up a lot of problems when you have like legal problems or things come
Hmm.
up in business or whatever. Just having the clear hierarchy and knowing who's in charge of what and who has the right to say what, that will clear up a lot of things. So,
And I feel like we were able to accomplish that through the process of like electing leaders and delegates and
hmm,
all that stuff. Like we accomplished the requirements, certainly legal requirements, but also like the, as you say, like having dare I say it, a chain of command, like a clear clear lines of for where I'm coming from. It establishes clear lines of communication, but those clear lines of communication are in an effort to determine like who is the person who's ultimately responsible for these things in a lot of ways, while at the same time making sure that the leaving it up to the people that actually own this to run it. You know, like I don't see the president micromanaging the Cafe Libre. I see the president kind of looking at overall the numbers that are coming in, and sitting down with the leader of Cafe Libre and kind of like discussing maybe 10 minutes out of a day, 15 minutes a day, saying, hey, I looked at last night's numbers. Seems like this is what's coming on. Just so you're aware, this is what we're seeing on our end. Maybe you want to communicate that to your team, that sort of thing. But the reality is, like, the president is probably going to be either a dedicated member, which means they're already sitting on that circle, the sociocracy circle. So you might get a really interesting scenario where, like, the person who's cleaning the toilets is also the president of the company, and but they're not the leader of the sociocracy circle, and they're not the delegate of the sociocracy circle. They meet once a month to vote on what happens in policy wise at Cafe Libre, and maybe they represent the maintenance crew. Maybe not. Maybe they're just a regular rank and file member of the maintenance crew, and but yet at least once a quarter they are responsible for communicating to all of our VAWMA membership what the state of the business is, where we're at in terms of making money or not making money, where the community members money is going, where the dedicated members money is going, and what we're doing to grow their investment, to get them a return on their investment. And they work with the treasurer and the secretary, which again may be dedicated members, maybe community members. But at the beginning, I very much would not be surprised if there's a strong overlap between dedicated members and the board of directors, the core team of people that are running it. And at the end of the day, it may end up looking like as simple as the leader of the group. Let's call them I don't know what's a good gender non-specific name. Pat, there we go. So Pat is going to be the leader of the Cafe Libre, and Sam will be the CEO of the company, or the president of the company, and but they'll also be on the maintenance crew. And like I don't know, I picture this stuff, I love it, but I also realize we're running out of time, so I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole anymore. Suffice to say, I think we've nailed it, or at least we've communicated enough to make it clear as mud about what autonomy and independence looks like within VAWMA and why. And yeah, so I think at this point we're going to let it land, and I'm going to say thank you to everybody who's joined us today to have a conversation with us a little bit about VAWMA and what we can do, what we can be. Next week we're going to be talking about, we're going to revisit education within the context of cooperatives and what that looks like for us in the context of these circles. Because and what it looks like in the context of the greater VAWMA community. So I'm going to put together a little slide presentation where we talk about what I hope the community members will buy into, in addition to just being part owners in the business, that they can be also members in how we can do like the things like the mutual aid stuff that we talked a lot about back in November, that was a part of the VAWMA vision, and how we accomplish things like that. So we'll go into education a little bit next week, yeah.
I like that. Yeah, like I was saying, it might be this this method might be a little bit of work. You might need to, get a little bit of education to figure it out, but it's not that difficult. It's just a little bit, and then you get to vote on where the money goes in your community. I mean, how good is that? That's what it should be about.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, you get to pocket a little bit of the money, so does everybody else. You get to, and then you also get to share, vote, like you say, in where the money goes elsewhere. And yeah, this is so exciting. I love talking about all this stuff. Good game, everybody. Thank you again for joining us. And we're going to go now to the outro. You can find us, I should say, on www.youtube.com/VAWMA. That's VAWMA, the Voluntary Association for Work Mutual Aid. Where you can find all of the stuff that we've been creating up there. One of these days I'll transfer them from the live stream to the actual uploaded videos thing, so we'll be a little bit more professional looking. Who can say? Point of the matter is, Rebecca, thank you again for joining us so much. Glad having you. I hope we'll have you again, and as often as you're able to join us. It's lovely to have a conversation. And
always exciting to talk about this stuff.
Yes. And to everybody else who's taking the time to join us, thank you again. Good game. And do not forget, you are awesome. Take care, everybody.
No.